Fancy intro music, yeah! Woo! Hey everybody, welcome back to the channel, and I apologize for this video coming out like literally 2 hours later than I wanted to. So, little quick insight into the life of a content creator. Here's what happened. I literally recorded this video. It went like 20 minutes. I was like, oh my gosh, this is so great. Wow! Until I listened to it back and the microphone was all jacked up and I sounded awful. So I had to redo it from scratch. So here we are, and today we're going to be taking a look at this right here, exactly as you would expect us to do on the third day of the Apex event. Now, just in case those of you are not super familiar with the Apex event, I want to show it here on the screen real quick. This has become a normal run between arcs. Every season between arcs, we now get Faction Hunt, Apex, and Crucible of War, just not in that order. Crucible of War usually coming first, then we do our Faction Hunt, and then we wrap it up with Apex as we get ready for the new arc that usually starts on Tuesday. So, stay tuned for Tuesday. Right now, though, you're getting asked to do Epic or Rare or any Armadas, honestly. You can do any of them. Epics obviously pay out the most points if you've saved up those, but you're getting asked to do Eclipse Armadas. So I think the basic thing to do, the basics, we're going to go over 3 crews for the Stella and when you should crew them and when you should use them and why they're so effective. And we're going to go over the various reasons of how to focus on the Stella and when to change up the officers if you have access to them. Now, I will go ahead and say this. There are more than the options that I'm going to discuss in this video. But I am going to try to highlight and focus on officers that everybody has had access to, as well as newer officers who have really helped change the game for late Stella play. I want to explain exactly how all of these things work, and hopefully by the end of it you go, wow, this guy's awesome. If you weren't already saying that. Hopefully you were, because I need the ego boost. Already had somebody last week tell me to get a real job. I'm over here like, So, let's get started. We have run several Armadas over the past couple days, and I want to start with this one. Now, there's a couple of crews in here that we're not going to talk about, like Rips and Captain Riker's. The Borg one doesn't work. I think Captain Riker might have run this because a long time ago, and I've already said that video has been redacted, but a long time ago, 8 of 10 worked for everything. Everything. Now she no longer does. So if you're running this crew, or I'm sorry, 9 of 10, these used to work, or it was 8 of 10. Used to work on any Armada. They no longer do. So just FYI if you're out there. We're going to start with some basic crews and go over why they're good and why they work. The first one I want to go with is actually the highest level player in this particular Armada. And this is the starter one. This is no matter where your Stella's at, no matter what level you're at, if you are doing Stellas, you can run this crew. How do I know? Well, simple. Unless you have extremely rushed in the game, you have Kirk, Spock, Khan. Now, if you follow the path that I typically teach to a lot of newer players and you're working on your faction officers, by level 28, you've got these first 2 at level 3, and this one is either unlocked or at 2%. So he's rank 1 or rank 2. It's a good start for level 28 and proceeding. If you haven't gotten there yet, don't worry. We're not here to shame you. You simply need to work on getting those officers to that level, because when you're running these Stellas, this is going to be a very common theme. You're going to see a lot of Kirk Spock for the Stella. While I don't use it for a lot of things at level 39 anymore, I still use Kirk Spock almost exclusively on every loadout I do with this particular ship. So we're going to start with this one, Kirk, Spock, Khan. Now, why do we run this? And we'll talk about it in detail. So you run it because, as you can see right here, the shields never died on this ship. Why did the shields never die? The shields never died because, well, you kept it alive. You kept it alive with Kirk Spock. Now, let me show you this actual, the victory one, I think, is the one I want to look at. But look at the actual number. So a Stella, even at max, and I can show you what mine looks like, a Stella typically has got, I don't know, anywhere from the low levels, 150,000 shields, at max levels, a few 100,000 shields. It doesn't have 3 million. For those who are curious, when you see 3 million displayed in a battle log with Kirk Spock, that is actually showing you how much shields you've actually regenerated. So not only did you start with 200,000, then let's just say he started with 200,000, then he would have regenerated 2.8 million worth of shields, and the shields never went down. Now, why are shields not going down important? I've talked about this in previous videos and explained the math, but in the short of it, if you have mitigation at a high level, whatever is not mitigated, so whatever damage is not mitigated, shields stop 80% of the remaining, and then 20% goes through. We'll talk about that a little bit more when we get into the battle log. The second crew I want you to focus on is this one. A little bit harder to procure, but particularly if you are a lower level Stella or a lower level player, 5 Kirk Spock is one of the best that you can run. The reason being is if you haven't maxed out your M number, that is the research for the Stella, this becomes very handy because it helps you get that maximum mitigation. And the short way of explaining that is you take the least amount of damage possible. So we'll look at the third crew and then we'll start explaining the ins and outs of each individual one. The third crew, and I typically recommend this on higher level Stellas, but we actually use this in this battle with a lower level one to show exactly what I'm talking about. This is Riker, Kirk, Spock. And if you have a max Stella, this is one of my favorite crews. Now let's talk about why this works and why it's better than Con, because Con is a critical bonus, and you think critical, you think bigger, better, stronger. But let's actually take a look at some of the battle log. So we're going to hop in here, and this goes 33 rounds. Now, what I'm going to do is compare early on, and you can use my damage as kind of like the standard, because my damage is never going to increase. I have nothing in my system that increases damage. Not a one. Sadly, I would like to have increased damage, but it was just not in the cards for me today. Well, I mean, I guess I could have. I could have actually put in a damage. Anyway, here's what we're going to do. I'm going to bust out the calculator real quick, because who doesn't like using calculators? I love using calculators, so we can show you mitigation in case you've never actually done this before. So you're going to take these numbers on the side by these numbers over here, and that's how you're going to determine your mitigation level. So let's go to mine. Let's find the first time I get hit. It's actually in the first round. So I mitigated 28,250 of 40,830. So how we find the mitigation? Real simple. We simply run the math. That's all we got to do. 40.83, bam, 70.47. Now, why is 70.47 important? This is going to sound really silly and make no sense, but remember, Scopely math. The maximum mitigation your ship can have is 71.19%. So if I'm at 70.4 and my Stella is not very well researched, y'all know that this is an area of the game that I've actually fallen behind on. That is helping get me the least damage possible to be taken. So when I have this happen right now, where I'm in this fight, this Armada is doing very little damage to me. Now, I will point out, one of the reasons that I leave this strategy, and as you level up, I talked about having like Riker or Khan on a higher level one. Here's why. Because if you go into your research tab, you want to go to the Outlaw tab. And even though DJ's mad that I rank this as the 5th most important tab in the game for research, there are still a lot of things for the Stella specifically that are really good. You can see that I'm lacking in a lot of these. However, you look at Stella Hull. This increases the actual hull health of your Stella. You look at shields and hull. These increase everything for all ships, which is really nice. But here's a key one too, Stella Eclipse defenses. This actually helps raise your mitigation stats versus the Eclipse Armadas. So you get to a point where you've progressed through your Stella research and you'll find that your mitigation is naturally close to max or at max anyway. You no longer need 5 of 10. You don't need Riker Beverly to get maximum mitigation and maximum damage. You can get there organically by yourself. Right now, I'm running 5 of 10 Kirk Spock for 2 reasons. 1, so that I can show you the base level of damage in the log, and 2, I can't survive as long at only a tier 6 Stella with my M research being at like 16. So I have to then find other ways to survive, because if you remember, it's just simple math. If you survive 33 rounds, like this entire battle log, if I survive the entire battle log versus only surviving 10 rounds, then it doesn't matter if in those 10 rounds I had Khan or Riker. I won't make as much damage as if I survived an additional 23 rounds. So surviving is the first thing that you got to focus on. But once you get past that point, then we can start focusing on creating greater damage. And when you're already already have great defenses, the greater damage will prevail. So now what we're going to do is you see my base Stella damage here. We're actually going to scroll down about 20 rounds in. I'm just picking 20 rounds because I know everybody's still alive, nobody's died, and we did use that Riker loadout on a weaker Stella that does not make it through the entire fight. So let's just go round 20 right here. So now you see the weapons charging. Y'all know how the weapon charging works, but here's my base, 71,000, 72, then you got a big critical. Now let's look at Slag. Now Slag is the one that's running the Con loadout, so almost everything Slag does should be a critical. So 198,000, 222,000, 199. Now what I want you to take note of is after Shadrach, look at Carrot. Carrot is the one who is running Riker. Look at Carrot's numbers in 20 rounds as a much lower tier Stella. Remember, Shadrach was running a max Stella with max level 45. Carrot was not. Look at this, same damage levels as a critical build on a much weaker Stella. Now, the tricky part is for Carrot, he did not have max mitigation. Carrot, in fact, we can find it here in a second. There's Shadrach. We're going to find one where Carrot takes a hit. Shadrach, wow, Shadrach, we're just taking it. There we go. So look at the very small amounts. We're going to pull out the calculator again. Bam, look at that transition. Beautiful. So you saw my mitigation was at 74.47. Now let's do Shadrach, where he only mitigated 9,538, but did 100 or of 457. Here's his mitigation, 21.1%. So he's dealing far more damage than I am, but taking way more damage than I am. That's simply a testament to Stella research. And once that Stella research is higher, that M score that you'll notice when you're in dock with the Stella, then a lot of what they are doing will actually be way better than what I'm doing. Sure, I last the entire fight, but they do more damage. Now, the one who probably contributed the most in this particular instance was Shadrach, because Shadrach never died. And Shadrach was able to produce a consistent amount of damage with the critical build. The one that has the greatest potential would be this Stella. This one at level 12 has the greatest potential because that Riker can grow so fast and so much that you're dealing way more damage than a Khan could, especially in the long term. Remember, this is a very low level Stella, only level 12. So you don't have the extra officer slots. You don't have the ability to get that mitigation higher with using like your defense officer stat. So all of those end up falling behind. But what you find in the game that if you're starting off, that having Kirk, Spock, Khan as a starter set is a great way to start your Stella journey. Then moving to 5 Kirk, Spock, if you can, helps make sure that that early mid-play of Stella is where you're surviving as long as possible while you're working on your research. But in-game, you want to start looking at how do I magnify the damage of the Stella as much as possible. Riker, Kirk, Spock is very popular, and if you've got your mitigation and all this research really, really high, then you can run, say, Riker, Beverly, Khan, and then have Riker growing and then Khan multiplying on top of that for insane amounts of damage. That's technically 4 crews I've given you. But take these crews to the heart, think about them, and think about these strategies of why you're deploying them, because that's what actually matters in the game. It's not what crews to use and blank. It's use these crews because of this. And now I will tell you, hey, as an early player, look at Riker, Kirk, Spock as a long term, but look early at Kirk, Spock, Khan. The KSK, that's a common for Stellas for years now. Then look at maybe 5 Kirk, Spock if you're noticing your mitigation isn't high and you're dying in battles. Now, if you're thinking that your mitigation is good because you've gotten a lot of research done, cool. Start moving on up and focusing on creating extra damage with the Stella, with Khan officers, with Rikers, and maybe even running like Riker, Beverly if you've unlocked them to get that extra damage growth with the synergy between Beverly and Riker, and then Khan multiplying on top of those. It's all about what you have and how you can be efficient as possible and have the most fun in the game. The good thing about the Stella is that, well, you can get it as an early level player, and the crews that you need for it, you can get very early as well, because we're talking about Kirk, Spock, Khan. The very starter set you can do very early, but as you progress, you get more stuff, and hopefully we get more opportunities to get the next generation officers like Riker, Beverly, Picard, and you can notice it get even better than that. If you have questions about that, well, drop them down in the comment section below. Apologies for the length of this video and for me having to re-record it, but hopefully it gave you some information that you needed, whether you're a newer player, older player, or somewhere in between. And as always, live long and prosper. Stay safe with those Space Cowboys. I love y'all, truly, and I appreciate you watching. Had somebody tell me to get a real job the other day, and you know what? Doesn't matter, because the rest of y'all love me, even if that one person doesn't. Deuces, that's me. I'll catch you on the next episode, which will be basically every day, because all we do is videos. Bye!
Fancy intro music, yeah!